Welcome to the Legal CFO.
Welcome to the show where clarity meets profitability. This is the Legal CFO with Ryan Kimler, the founder of Net Profit CFO. If you are a law firm owner looking to get a handle on your finances, grow your bottom line, and finally take control of your numbers, you're in the right place. Each episode, Ryan breaks down the business side of law with straightforward strategies to help your firm run smarter, earn more, and scale with confidence. I'm Leann Lyon, and today we are getting into a problem a lot of law firm owners feel but can't quite explain. Why your firm is busy, your team is working nonstop, but the profit just isn't there. Hello, Ryan. It's good to see you.
Yes, thank you for having me and looking forward to today.
Yeah, this is a fascinating topic for sure. So, Ryan, why do so many law firm owners feel like their firm is so busy, but still struggle to see the strong profit at the end of the month?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that could be at play here. It starts with efficiency. And are our folks that are working for us really being efficient? Are we at max capacity? Sometimes I find that law firms are not, and where they think, how many cases a attorney can handle, for example, they might be a little bit on the low side of what they think capacity is. And so, I've not really said this on the show before, but I say this to clients all the time. Owning a law firm, it's really an inventory game. It's an inventory kind of business. You're turning cases over, right? You're bringing them in, you're signing them, you're servicing those cases, and then you close them and they move out. So it's a different way of looking at it, but it's, comes back to inventory turns and how efficient are we being? What kind of case volume are we doing? So that's one thing that could be at play. The other thing that could be at play is just not being priced right. This last week, I talked with an estate planning firm, and they do everything flat rate without tracking hours. And sometimes without tracking hours, it's hard to know, are we really priced right and are we being profitable on all of our cases? And so sometimes that can be at play as well, is just not knowing if we're priced right or if we're leaving money on the table. And then finally, after we put all the work in, we put all the effort in, then we get to the billing process. And we've talked about that before on the show. There's a lot of things that go into the billing process, from, just collecting and gathering all the hours, and getting the bills out to clients, and then also collecting those payments. And so, it can be a long time before the work that you do today really shows up in the bank account. And so there's a lot of factors that could be at play. It comes down to, how do we separate those factors out and figure out which one is really kind of the problem?
Let's zero in on one of those. How can a firm tell if pricing is the real issue behind low profit, even when the revenue looks solid?
Yeah, always good to check some other places in your market. I think that's always good. And I think that's where a lot of law firms start. They'll have like someone who's in the office, maybe a paralegal or office admin, call around to other law firms and kind of get some quotes and get some more information. But I think it's also important too to look at what we pay our people, and look at, what does it take? And I like to start with those younger associates that have, say, maybe 1 to 5 years of experience. What do we pay those people, and what do we expect them to manage from a caseload perspective? And then how much revenue is that? And kind of figuring out, if I had, hypothetically speaking, if I had this associate attorney at full capacity and I'm paying them X dollars, what's my return on what they're billing? That could be a 3x return on salary. It could be a 4x return. Could be a 5x return. It kind of depends on where you're at geographically and what practice area that you're in. But just knowing that number, if you're, lower than a 3x return, or if you're lower really than a 4, it could mean that you're priced a bit low. Those younger associates that it's their job to do the legal work should be profit centers for the law firm, and you should get a strong return on them. So that's a great place to start to figure out if we're priced right. Um, I always tell my clients on the hourly side, small increases make a big difference over the course of the year, right? So if let's just say that associate's supposed to bill 1,500 hours per year, a $10 price increase is 15 grand, right? So the numbers move really, really quickly, right? It's kind of a high leverage situation. So small increases can make a big difference, but knowing those returns can help you kind of go down the road of figuring out, are we priced right or are we underpriced?
So, where can time typically get spent inside of a law firm that feels productive but maybe doesn't actually drive profit? Patrick Lenciani's book, Death by Meeting, is coming to mind for some reason, maybe.
Yeah. Staff meetings, right? And to some extent, you've got to strategize, right? And you've got to collaborate on cases, especially when lawyers are working together, right? But all of that time should be built when you're collaborating on those cases. And sometimes that just gets missed, gets underestimated. That's the other thing, is just underestimating how much time is really getting invested. That could be in writing an email. That could be in a phone call. You just naturally pick up the phone and you don't really look at, well, what time did this call start necessarily? So those are a few places. Sometimes legal research and how long that really takes. Those are a few places where time can definitely be lost. Again, I highly, highly, highly recommend for all the law firms that I talk to that are billing hourly, get in the habit of using a timer. When you start a brand new task, you start the timer. Even if you have to pause, to go to the bathroom, go to the kitchen, something like that, right? Pause the timer, right? Don't just let it run, because then when you let it run, you come back, you stop it, and then it becomes an estimation on, well, how long was I working before I had to get up and go to the kitchen, right? And so always get in the habit of using that timer, keeping it up to date, pausing it when you're away, so that you have the exact time that you're spending on activities. I think that's a couple of things there. And the final thing that I would say is, from my experience, every law firm owner, they have their own, I don't know if I would call them quirks or what you would call them, but everybody seems to have specific activities that they choose to write off or write down at the end of the month. And sometimes I think it's justified. Sometimes I think we can be a little bit harsh with it. And I think as the owner, we get in our head of, is the client going to push back on this bill? Right. That's what I've heard from my clients. Or, I don't want a bill going out from my firm that looks over, exaggerated on the time. Right. And so there's a fear or concern there. And I think, again, just good time tracking practices help you really prevent that, to know that, okay, this is the time that really went in. Nothing's overestimated. And then again, I would highly, highly encourage, really evaluate, if we're writing something off, what is our justification? Is it reasonable? Do other firms do the same thing? If you're unsure about that, talk with some other colleagues that you have, right? But I've always experienced that every law firm has their own quirks and, weird ways for billing, and sometimes it can cost the firm a lot of money.
So let's talk also about the clients, because sometimes, taking on the wrong client might be the issue. Talk about that a little bit. How can that impact this scenario we're talking about today?
For sure. Yes. Clients that end up not paying. Those are the ones that hurt the firm the most, right? Again, you've probably paid a staff member to go and do this work already, right? So you've had payroll expenses that go along with it. Sometimes you've had case expenses if you have filing fees and things like that. That is money out the door. And then obviously there is overhead and marketing that is probably could be somewhat allocated or associated with every single case, right? Maybe something gets referred and you would say, well, my marketing cost there was zero, but that referral relationship had to start somewhere, right? And so when you have these expenses that go into these cases and then we don't collect, it really, really hurts the firm because obviously you've already outlaid money out of your pocket, right? And so, a few things to make sure that we prevent that. Collecting retainer fees is always at the top of my list. Don't be afraid of them, right? And don't be afraid to collect a good portion of what your average case is really going to take. So, um, if it takes, flat rate $5,000 to do someone's estate plan, don't be afraid to collect the whole thing before you start work, right? And maybe it's taken half and half, right? I know a lot of firms do like 2 meetings. They do an initial one that's like a strategy, sit down, what do we need to protect, all that kind of thing. And then the second one is we're actually signing the plan, we've done the work. So they take the retainer in 2 halves. Perfectly fine, but let's make sure that it's available to take, right? Not that we've sat down, done the strategy meeting, and then we get to signing and the second half is due and the client doesn't want to come in because they don't have the second half, right? Let's not put ourselves in that kind of a position. And the same is true with other practice areas as well, right? That could be family law, could be criminal defense, could be immigration, right? Collecting those fees up front, really, really, really important. And then the other thing that I would say is I've seen a lot of firms, and this is especially on the flat rate side, your immigration, your criminal law, they go to payment plans. And I think what's really important here, this kind of goes to the topic, like our law firm can look really busy and the amount of cash that we've collected is not reflective of how busy we are. Some of that money gets ate up in payment plans. I have seen some immigration firms that have payment plans for 3 years where the client pays monthly for 3 years. That's a long time to wait to get all of your money for services. Now, in some cases, you're not releasing work product until the client's fully paid. So it might feel like you're somewhat protected. But there's a lot of headaches that go with that, right? A lot of times you collect a credit card up front or collect a debit card in time, they expire or they get fraud on them, right? And so then you've got more work on your office staff to always follow up, collect the new card, collect the payments, right? You'll have failed payments that need to be reviewed. So just, shortening those timelines, collecting more upfront when you can. If you're going to, do a $5,000, payment plan, maybe it's, hey, we have to collect half up front and then we can do a payment plan on the second half, right? And you could give your client like the first month since they paid the first half down to not have the payment plan start, right? So you could start the payment plan in month 2. But all of those things, again, if you extend your timeline to collect, they really affect how much cash is in the bank, how fast it comes in, and just makes your liability stronger or your risk stronger that the client's not going to fully pay and you're not going to fully collect. So all of those things definitely contribute.
So, can you share an example of a firm that was busy but not profitable? And it wasn't the wrong client, but they were actually taking on the wrong cases.
Yes. This goes back to an immigration firm as well. We sat down and we did a pricing review just on all of their prices across the board. And each form that they did, each application that they did had different pricing. Now, this firm luckily really tracked their hours. And so we were able to look at their flat rates and look at the rates they were realizing on those cases. So a $1,000 case that had 10 hours, our true realized rate's $100 an hour, right? And so we went through and again, we kind of did that assessment. We put the numbers together and a lot of their cases, their realized rates were really, really low. Most of them under $200 an hour. Now that's across not just legal staff, but also paralegals as well and legal assistants. But it means that, they had a lot of volume, but their prices, their realized hour was so low, right? That it really affected firm profitability. It affected cash flow. And, I guess I wouldn't call it necessarily a mistake, but the perspective that kind of brought their pricing was, well, this is how long it took the owners to do a certain case, right? And I think owners can kind of overlook that, right? That a lot of times the staff that you bring in maybe is not as experienced or not as efficient at getting things done as you are, right? There's a reason why you're the firm owner. And so, being able to look at that report and adjust accordingly for the hours that were actually going into these cases. And we were looking at averages, right? Some of them it was more, some of them it was less, but we're looking at overall averages over the course of the last year. We were really able to adjust their pricing moving forward and raise rates, and we were not pricing them out of the market. They did not have a slowdown in volume after that point. So they just started realizing higher hourly rates, which helped their profitability and really improved cash flow. It took a little while for the new rates to kind of kick in and for them to really turn over the cases that they currently had on their plate. But in time, it really helped cash flow at a firm that is just super busy all the time, super full of cases. I think on an average month, they open about 170 cases. They've got two partners that do the intakes and do the sales. And yeah, the average month they're opening 170 cases. So very, very high volume, very, very busy. And now we're working on getting them priced right and higher hourly rates.
I always wonder that about law school. How much sales training do they do in law school exactly? Just as an aside.
Not a ton, not a ton. Sales and business training, not a ton. I think some law schools are working at getting better. But I've got a really good friend of mine that does sales training for lawyers and law firms and helping them with their processes and making that consistent and improving their close rate, which also obviously brings in more cases, brings in more sales, and brings in more money. So,
So, if somebody suspects that what we're talking about today is happening in their own firm, what numbers should they look at first to start to confirm it?
yeah, there's a lot of them to look at here. Because you're hitting on both of the pricing and the case volume sides. So I would start probably with the pricing and payroll and really looking at returns, as I talked about earlier on associates, for example. And then I would probably dive into efficiency after that. If our lawyers are supposed to be billing 120 hours a month, are they really doing it, right? If they're not doing it, why are they not doing it? Because I've ran into a lot of firms that have, monthly billable requirements and their attorneys don't meet those hours. So either, they're just not being efficient and not tracking their time well, or maybe they need more work, right? But that's a conversation worth having. So I would say that would be step two. So again, I would start with pricing number one, go to efficiency in the actual hours number two, and really just review that. You could review that over the last month, last 3 months, right? Are my staff really hitting their hours? And then third, if they're maybe not hitting their hours, I would go to what's our open case volume right now? What's the capacity of the firm? What do we believe that it is? And have a look at, what's your demand for new sales volume? Do we need to open, X number of new cases, right, to keep our staff busy? So that's the order that I would go and evaluate things.
Well, for a number girls like me, I'm just loving all these numbers and they're very possible, but that's what we're going to wrap up with for today. And that is it for this episode of The Legal CFO. If you are a law firm owner who's tired of working harder without seeing better financial results, Ryan Kimler and the team at Net Profit CFO help you get clarity around your numbers and build a more profitable firm. Visit netprofitcfo.com to learn more, explore resources, or book a profit growth call. And if you found this episode helpful, remember to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with another law firm owner who might need it. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.